Well, they are from North Carolina, from Red Oak and Nashville, North Carolina. And they moved to New York back in probably 1950, and part of the giant migration to the big city. And I grew up mainly poor there. We had a fire in our slum building when I was about 10. And I'm not even quite sure how we then suddenly became more middle class. But I think I think a lot of it is my father worked in the garment industry and had any number of people who really liked him, and I'm sure just came to bat for him and gave him raises and promotions and whatnot. It's so interesting. When I was about 14 or 15, I had really been having sex with guys with a vengeance, and I was trying to figure out whether or not I could tell my parents. And I almost did at that age, because I went to visit my father at work, and he worked in the garment industry, so there were designers and all kinds of flamboyant men all around. My father seemed very comfortable, but it still took me years before I came out to my father. I can't remember what we talked about a while back, but last year my father died a really, really horrible death, and to the point where most people were kind of happy that he was in another place, because he really wasn't himself anymore. And so I went to the funeral, my father's funeral, obviously, and I'm sitting next to my mother, and the funeral was almost over. And this is in a tiny little Southern Baptist church in the middle of North Carolina. And the Reverend starts looking more at the death announcement and realizes that my father, Thurman Hedgepeth, has a son who lives in Seattle with another man. And immediately, and I could see him thumbing through this, and he gets up and he launches into anti-homosexual 101 through 501 at my father's funeral. And I know that he thought that I would sit there and would kind of hang my head. And I could feel my mother stiffening up. So I didn't want to do what I really wanted to do, which is launch into one of those New York City charades. And I would have been perfectly comfortable doing that. It didn't matter if I might have been the only one in that church who would have understood what I was saying. But I just stared a hole into that man's head until he could not look at me anymore. And then afterwards, he came up to us and he said, "Oh, so which one of the brothers is from Seattle?" And he went, "That would be me," in such a way that he just kind of backed off. And then he left. And then all of these people, 80-year-old aunts, I can almost start crying now, 80-year-old aunts, cousins, they all came up, and it was almost as if they said, "Okay, the Reverend has had his say, but let's get back to reality. Where's John, and why isn't John here?" And it's like there's so many ways to attack and to get at and to deal with people who are being shits. I'm using that word again. And I think my relatives had a much better conversation about that, because I handled it without kind of losing it.
Yeah, there's